Hey guys, Dr. Barry here. I'm going to be going live with Mr. James Furnish momentarily, and we're going to be talking about several different topics with regards to the ketogenic way of eating that I think you might be interested in. Just checking to make sure I'm on the right page. I often go live on the wrong page. I don't know. Blame it on my ADD, I guess. So we'll wait for James to join. If you are watching this on the replay, feel free to leave your questions in the comments. Even after the live is over, either James or I or Nisha or Kayla or someone will come back by and answer your questions. Let me see if I can find James here. James is a moderator in the group Adapting to Keto. Hey, Kayla. I just spoke for you to do work. I hope that's okay with you. Hey, Janet. Hey, Sarah. Yeah, let me message. Okay, we're live right now. Now, let's see if I can see James. Where are you, James? Give me a comment when you join so I can get you started. We're going to be talking about insulin, and we're going to be talking about the ketogenic diet for your kids. And so you might want to stay tuned for this. I think there's going to be some pretty interesting information. And then, as always, you're welcome to share this in your keto or low-carb, high-fat group if you think it would help the members. I'm always fine with that. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Deidre. If you guys don't follow Kayla Zollicoffer, she works with me at the clinic, and she has a growing Instagram page. There's Crystal. Hey, Crystal. Hey, Stacy. There's James. Okay, let's see if I can add him. Hold still. Well, James. Can I add James? No. James, if you're on, we have this problem every time. If you're on your laptop, close out Facebook and open it back up. And then, because I can't add you right now. And then if that doesn't work, you may have to get on your phone or vice versa. Whatever machine you're on, get on the other machine. Close out Facebook and then open it back up. And then usually that fixes it. Then we can bring you on. So how's everybody doing? Did you guys grill some tasty fatty meat today? Because we sure did. We grilled ribeyes that have been marinating for about a week and a half in the fridge, so they were almost dry aged. And we also grilled some lamb chops, which are my personal favorite. Lamb chops and ribeye I could live on. Actually, I am living on that. So yeah, love that stuff. What did you guys grill? Tell me in the comments. I want to know if you're new. Type new in the comments because I want to welcome you. And then I want you to tell me where you're from. Oh, Jasper, Alabama, Arizona. Where else are you guys from? Florida, New Mexico, Missouri or Missouri? I don't know. I hear it different ways. Baltimore, Maryland. Hey, Lisa. Tell me where you're from, guys. I want to know. And then if you share this in one of your groups, type shared in the comments, or if you share it on your Facebook page. Hey, John Kaufman, you just finished your T-bones. Good man. Well played. Well played. I love a good T-bone. If you guys didn't see my new video, I posted it on Facebook and YouTube about how you don't have to be afraid of grilling. I've been looking into the research about grilling and the char on the meat and how that's supposed to cause cancer. And I came up with a big fat zero. I didn't find anything in the research that makes me think it's dangerous in any way for human beings to eat grilled meat or charred meat. Now, obviously, don't burn it to a crisp. You want to be eating it. Hey, Dory Lynn Marie. How many names you got, woman? I can't help it. I always make faces. Beef ribeye and beef ribs, Arizona. Hey, Ann. Karen from Leavenworth, Kansas. Max from New Orleans. Hey, Lindy. How's it going? I'm waiting for James to come back in on another machine or to... Why are you guys giving me mad faces? Who's giving me mad faces? What did I do? Shay from Melbourne. Hey, Shay, welcome. It's like already tomorrow morning there, right? Ooh, porterhouse. Very nice, Paula. Becky from upstate New York. Yeah, Nisha, I think maybe live right now. Don't you guys be going to watch her. You stay here and watch me. No, you can go watch Nisha. It's fine. I'm not sure what she's talking about tonight. You'll have to watch me on the laptop and Nisha on your phone or something. I don't know. I don't know. Hey, Mary from Mobile, Alabama. Oh, do we have a troll? Who's the troll? Oh, Matt's hitting the wrong icon. Matt, be nice. Where are you from, Matt? Tell me where you're from. Where's James? Is that James? Yes. Oh. If anybody can figure out who's being mean, let me know. It's an easy thing to just block them. James should be joining us here momentarily. There he is. Hey, James.
Hey, how are you, Dr. Barry?
I am doing great. Welcome. Glad to have you, man. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Was having some internet troubles, and so I had to switch to my phone.
Yeah, that happens almost every time we go live. So tell us a little bit about you, James. What did you grill today, first of all?
Well, I've got a couple of chunks of brisket I'm going to throw on the smoker here pretty soon. I was
Nice.
building 8 earlier today, so that was taking up most of my early part of the day.
Excellent. Very nice brisket. I could live with that. I had some ribeyes and some lamb chops today to celebrate our holiday. So,
Oh, nice.
James, this is your first time joining us. Tell everybody a little bit about you and what we need to know about you and why we should listen to you.
All right. Well, let's see where to begin. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years, I weighed the heaviest I had ever weighed. I was over 300 pounds. Was, making tons of bad decisions, of course. So I went and saw a doctor, just picked one off Google that was pretty close to my house. And fortunately for me, she was a proponent of the ketogenic diet and recommended I check it out. I had a lot of the classic symptoms of being obese. I had the high A1C, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And she wanted me to try fixing that with diet instead of medicine.
Excellent.
So that was in September of 2016, and I kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, kind of did a little bit of my own research. I was about ready to make a huge change in my life, so I tried to get as much info on it as I could, and so then I started eating ketogenic in January of 2017, and have been going nonstop since then. So all in all, I lost about 115 pounds.
Nice.
Cholesterol level is superb. Blood pressure is stable. A1C dropped. Everything worked for me on the diet. My doctor now calls me her star patient. I get a high five every time I go in there. So yeah, I've just been researching as much as I can about it, just trying to continue to learn. And I'm now taking a personal training certification course to incorporate more exercise along with the diet, and just to find that balance.
I love it. I love it. You guys, I want to know what year you started keto. If you're watching this, type what year you started keto in the comments so we can see. I started keto probably 2015-ish, and you started in 2016. I want everybody to type in the comments what year you started keto. I want to know. So you're an autodidact. I love that. I love, first of all, that you know what that word means, and second of all, that you are that, because that's kind of what I am. Obviously I'm a family doctor, but I got half a semester of education in medical school about human nutrition. It was half a semester. I think it was 1 or 2 hours a week for half a semester, and that was it. That was the only time that nutrition was talked about in med school. And so everything I've learned about nutrition, I learned despite medical school. And so, yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the same way. What do you do for a living, James?
Right now I'm a chef. I've been working in restaurant business for about 30 years. The last 15 I've been at the executive level. So yeah, and 30 years for me is long enough. I feel like it's time to maybe try some other things. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not ready to like throw in the towel yet. I still have enough pep in my step to run a kitchen. So
I hear you. I hear you. That's awesome. And so you know all about food coming kind of from the other angle. And I
yeah,
know all about, health and medicine coming from the other angle. And I think it's intriguing and very interesting that we both meet in the middle of keto. Isn't that cool?
yeah, it's really cool how it can bring people together from just different. Like you said, I'm at one end of the spectrum, you're at the other, and that we found something that we can come together on. I think is great.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Nicole. So what are we going to talk about this evening, James? Where are we going to start?
Well, I've got just a couple of things I've jotted down. I thought maybe I'd just fire off some topics and you kind of expand on them a little bit.
Sure.
So I think at the beginning, I think I'd rather, let's see why most of the people are here. I would imagine it's, being overweight. I mean, yes, we know that there's plenty of benefits metabolically with the ketogenic diet, but I think for most people to get to the point where they're now going to completely change the way they eat, whether they're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, whatever, they've had so many years of eating the standard American diet. Now, all of a sudden, they want to just change all of that. And, so I think it's mostly the obesity problem with our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned that you had half a semester of nutrition during medical school. How many years of medical school total was there for you?
So I had 4 years of medical school proper. Then you graduate, and then I did a family medicine residency. So that's 3 more years of training. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the 7 years of my medical training, my formal training, I got a half semester class. It was a formal class that was actually entitled nutrition, and maybe 2 lectures about nutrition, like in very specific circumstances, like the nutrition for someone with kidney failure or the nutrition for someone with severe heart failure. But as far as just nutrition as a health prevention tool, zero education whatsoever. As far as nutrition or your diet as a preventative or as a treatment to reverse or correct a medical condition, zero, no training whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that now that the ketogenic way of eating is becoming more popular and there's a lot more research available, do you think medical schools will now push a little bit more towards this nutrition training, or are you thinking that it's going to kind of stay the old school way?
No, I think that it's coming. I don't think that we need to wait for that. I think people like you and I need to be pushing from the bottom, sharing the message, spreading the message, because never, and I've said this before, but never is the president of the American Medical Association going to go live on Fox and CNN and say, God, man, we were stupid. We totally messed up on the diet thing. You should eat keto.
Right.
That's never going to happen. The head of the ADA, the AHA, the NIH, the FDA, none of those guys are ever going to say that. And so it's going to have to come from us. It's going to have to come from lives just like this, from sharing videos, from writing blog posts, to just sharing your own personal experience. Because you can see, just as a grassroots movement, keto's blowing up. And
Mm-hmm.
and the reason it's blowing up is because it works and it's sustainable. And it once you get used to it, it's pretty darn easy. You're not
Right.
hungry. You're not hungry. You're not suffering. You're not tired. You feel great. You look great, and you get healthier. And so, how would that not catch on?
Right. And you mentioned sustainability there. There's still a lot of people naysaying the ketogenic way of life, saying that it is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Where I find, for me, it's completely sustainable. I mean, is it just because, do you think more people are just looking for just the weight loss benefits and they don't really care beyond that? I mean, one thing I try to push in our group is, health should be measured where you're at 10 years from now, 20 years from now, not in a few short weeks or months even, So for me anyway, I think the long-term health is what is, the bigger issue there.
Yeah.
And do you think that whole, like the groups that naysay the ketogenic diet, do you think that they're just looking at short-term health and that's why they're saying these things?
No, I think they don't know better, James. I think, and you may tell me if you've experienced this. I haven't experienced a single human who's actually done keto for a month or 2 or 3 come to me or message me and say, man, I just can't sustain this. Keto's not sustainable. I'm going to quit. Have you ever heard that from a human ever?
Well, funny enough, I have heard it from one. My girlfriend, when I first started, she was trying it with me, and she just could not deal with it. We had to take her to the hospital. She did get into self-induced ketoacidosis. Not life-threatening, obviously, but her body just could not metabolize the fat. I don't know if she could, like, bring that energy into her mitochondria and actually utilize ketone bodies. So, but that's the only instance I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, and the only people I've ever heard say, "Oh, keto's not sustainable," are people who've never tried it.
Yeah.
Or people who are selling a book advocating one of the many calorie restriction diets, right? Like Ornish, Flexitarian, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. Of course, those people are going to say that keto is not sustainable because they don't want people to try it, because they know if people try keto, they'll never, ever buy their products again because they won't need them. Right. And so, yeah, you've heard one person say keto's not sustainable who actually tried it. I haven't heard a single person say keto's not sustainable who's actually given it a real try. And so I think that's a scare tactic from people who would just assume you didn't try keto. I think that's where that's coming from.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And you see all, like, everybody's all over the social media and they're just saying, no, you need the carbs. And, so yeah. I think it's just trying to shift away from that old school way of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Travis. The vegan doctors and Jillian Michaels, they're the ones who say keto's not sustainable. And I think that they should probably try it, because most of the vegans I see look ill. They don't look well. They don't look happy. They look emaciated and unhealthy. They maybe should try keto and eat some fatty meat. I bet it would make them feel better.
All right. So I guess next, I was going to highlight mainstream keto, but I guess we can expand upon that a little bit. Do you think anytime in the near future, I mean, it seems like all the keto specialists, and I'm talking more like, your Instagram heroes and whatnot, they can all seem to agree that it's different for everybody, but yet they all want their way to be the only way and the right way to do it. So what do you think that confusion is ever going to come to an end? I mean,
well, no, I don't, but I don't think that's bad. As long as we're doing this in a collegial way, in a loving way, in a debate, I think that's fine. Now, if we degrade into an argument, then obviously that's not helping anybody. But I do think there is more than one way to keto. On a post on my Instagram page recently, I said, which is your keto? Is it carnivore? Is it meat heavy keto? Is it veggie heavy keto? Is it ovo-lacto vegetarian keto? Because I think you can keto any of those different styles. And I think depending on your unique genetics and your unique gut bacteria, I think that there's this particular ketogenic diet for you. But I think the one thing that all of us agree on is that you need to eat very low carb. I think that's the one thing we all agree on. There's no doubt about that. Some people think it needs to be high protein, moderate fat. Some people high fat, moderate protein. But that's okay. And I've said before, as long as you're eating super low carb, I win and I'm happy. I don't care. I don't care what else you do. Just eat super low carb and get your fats. You guys watching, tell us which way is your style. Are you a carnivore? Are you meat heavy keto, veggie heavy keto? Are you an ovo-lacto pescatarian? Are you doing vegan keto? Because I keep hearing about that. I can't imagine how you could do that. That seems to be like that might be a challenge. But tell me which style of keto you do. Tell me in the comments. What next, James?
So yeah, I think that kind of will segue right into my next topic. I wanted to get into gluconeogenesis a little bit. And our group is kind of more of a beginner's group, so I'd like to keep some of the basic things. So if we could just expand on GNG a little bit, because a lot of people are really afraid of protein, and I would be interested in like what you find is a good protein range. I know Finney and Volek recommend 0.6 to 1 gram per pound lean body mass. That seems to be pretty accurate. It's kind of the one that I kind of stick with as well. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I could talk about gluconeogenesis all day.
Yeah, I'd recommend for most people 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of lean body mass. I think that's exactly right. And again, I think that's different for everybody as well. If you're sedentary and you have no intention of building muscle and getting swole, I think that you don't need a gram of protein per, right? But if you're
Right.
wanting to build some muscle and you're wanting to, burst out of your shirt, you're going to have to eat a little extra protein in order to build that muscle. Now let's talk about gluconeogenesis. So what gluconeogenesis is when your liver, and some people even think that skeletal muscle does it as well, but we know the liver does. Your liver can make glucose, and indeed your liver makes glucose every minute of every day. Whether you're eating, no matter what you're eating, no matter what diet, gluconeogenesis is not something that turns on and turns off. Now you can definitely ramp it up and ramp it down, but you're always making some degree of glucose. It's just something your liver does. Controlling your blood sugar is an exquisitely complicated thing, because it's basically like your body is a town of 500,000 inhabitants, and every different organ, every different tissue is an inhabitant, and it needs this but it doesn't need that. And so your liver's constantly adjusting and tweaking every minute of the day. And so the question that most people on keto have about gluconeogenesis is, if I eat too much protein, is my body going to convert that to glucose through gluconeogenesis and stall my weight loss or knock me out of ketosis or something to that effect? And I would refer anybody who's worried about that to an excellent video put on YouTube by Dr. Ben Bickman. And he's been actually researching this for years. And if you're eating high carb, if you're eating 50 or more grams of carbs a day, then you can definitely eat too much protein, and it'll raise your insulin and initiate gluconeogenesis. But if you're eating very low carb, and see, we're back to that again, James. If you eat very low carb, then you almost can't eat enough protein to knock yourself out of ketosis or to initiate gluconeogenesis. That's been my experience. And then Dr. Ben Bickman, Bikman, has an excellent video about all of it, and he actually researches this and has kind of culminated all the research into one spot. And he has an excellent presentation on YouTube about just this topic.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll definitely look for that, because I did a round of protein sparing modified fast for 12 days myself, where I was eating 2 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass and only 20 grams of fat. And every morning I woke up and, during this, I would test, my ketones and my blood glucose. And every morning I would have at least 1 millimolar of ketones. So I know it wasn't, this 366 grams of protein I was consuming every day with minimal amounts of dietary fat that would really, do anything. I still think a lot of people are just kind of afraid. And especially when some of those people that, are concerned with gluconeogenesis, all they'll say is too much protein, but nobody ever really puts like an arbitrary value on it. And obviously we're all different. And like you said, we all have different activity levels, different end goals as well. So, we will need to tweak that a little bit. But I do find that a lot of times just nobody will put a range on it, and they'll just say too much.
Yeah,
so
totally agree.
If I posted my protein macro and a 120-pound sedentary female saw it, she'd probably be like, that's too much protein.
Yep.
Whereas, it really isn't, just depending on the individual.
Exactly. Totally agree.
Kind of a little something that I'm starting to get into is a little more nutrient timing. And I know there are some people that say, consume your carbohydrates at night, which I've actually been experimenting with on myself. I've also been doing a lot of backloading with protein at night, because it seems that while we're sleeping, that's when the body's really going to be doing most of what it wants and needs to do. Do you have any thoughts on nutrient timing like that, or do you think it matters when you consume your carbohydrates? Or
I don't think I personally don't think it matters for me personally, and I think that it probably doesn't matter much for most people, but I think it's an excellent experiment to pursue. I totally get the concept that, maybe 50,000 years ago, we didn't eat, all macros at each meal. We didn't eat 3 meals a day. We may have done just that very thing. And I think another great concept to experiment with is the seasonal approach, right? I think that there are people who eat the bulk of their carbs during the autumn, and then they really do a lot of fasting during the winter. And I think that's very ancestrally appropriate. And a lot of people are experimenting with that. And I think all of those are legitimate experiments. But for me, I haven't found the need to do any of those yet. I mean, that could change because we all change as we go through our journey. But tell me what you're experimenting with and what you found so far.
Well, it's very recent. I've only been running this for a couple weeks. But so far I've noticed like everything is working for me. I seem to be one of the lucky ones that can really utilize ketone bodies. I mean, I pretty much eat a pound of peanut butter every night, and I've been doing so for the last 4 months and have been weight stable the entire time. And this is consuming, my normal macros during the day. I eat this jar of peanut butter before I go to bed, it's an extreme amount of carbohydrates in one sitting and a lot of protein and fat as well. And we're talking almost 3,000 calories here. And like I said, I've maintained weight. And so it's very interesting to me to see something like that happen. And I haven't like ramped up workouts or anything. Nothing has changed where I'm not burning extra calories. So it's very strange that this has been going on. But that peanut butter has been the only source of my carbs during all of this. I'll eat a small amount of spinach with dinner, but that's been it.
Yeah. And you may or may not know this, James, over the last 7 months, I've been 95 to 97% carnivore. And I only incidentally, I'll eat a carb here and there. If my wife, Nisha, is eating some Brussels sprouts or something, I might have a Brussels sprout. But just as far as my meal, it's all fat and protein. And it's been that way for the last 7 months. And so I'm eating as close to zero carb as I've ever eaten in my entire life. And I actually feel very, very good, very energetic. I've lost another 7 pounds. People tell me they can see it in my face that I look slimmer. And so I'm very happy right now with super, super low carb. Probably a gram a day would be my average over the last 7 months.
Yeah, I'm definitely way above that right now. I saw somebody had asked me what kind. I eat Adams, all natural. It's just peanuts and salt.
Gotcha. How long somebody wanted to know how long it took you to lose your weight?
It took me 1 year exactly to go from about 308 pounds to 193. I got down to the 193 pounds and I'm 6'5", so it did not look very good on me in my eyes. And so at that point I decided that I was going to start lifting weights and exercising.
Yeah. And
so I've been doing that now for a little over a year. I started weightlifting in July last year. And so now, like I said, I'm up to 208 pounds now. My weight, it's been fluctuating between 205 and 210. So I just kind of average it at 208. But my body fat has dropped significantly. I mean, when I was at 193 pounds, if I was just doing like a visual or using the Navy method, I had about 25% body fat. Last time I ran a Navy on my body fat, I was at 10.3%. So more than half, and I've gained, 15 pounds in this past year while dropping body fat at the same time.
That's awesome. Awesome. Somebody asked what vegetables are best on keto. I usually think the brassicas are best in the leafy greens. So broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, turnip green, spinach, those are really, in my opinion, if you're going to eat a carb, unless you're doing an experiment like James is, if you're going to eat a carb, it needs to be a green carb. You don't need to eat a carb that's really not a nut or a green. And so peanuts, where are you from, James?
I'm from Oregon originally.
Okay, so you may or may not know peanuts grow under the ground. A lot of people don't realize that if they're not from the South. They think they grow on a peanut tree, right? But peanuts are not really nuts. They're actually legumes. And so for some people, they're too starchy, and some people, they're inflammatory. But some people can eat them just fine, and they have gains on them. But then a lot of people will stall, and that's one of the things they have to get rid of is the peanuts. And so I quit eating peanuts a long time ago.
Yeah, I should add that in there. I would never tell anybody, yeah, eat a jar of peanut butter
Right.
every night. You'll be
Exactly.
fine. You
Yeah.
know, I am actually kind of coming to a close with this, so I'm going in for a round of blood work to see what it's done to the inside, and I am expecting probably some wonky numbers compared to my last blood work that I had done in February. But you know, I have no problem experimenting on myself, and I think people, you know, as long as it's safe and reasonable, and I think people should not
Absolutely.
be afraid of that. I mean, I think a lot of people, they'll get this macro calculator, whichever one they use, it gives them this number, and they just keep it like that. Then they'll just ask for help, and without knowing so much about people, we all just have to kind of give blanket advice, you know, especially when you're
Exactly.
not a medical professional, you're just
Right.
moderating a keto group, you know,
Right.
you kind of do the basics, you know, check your electrolytes, you know,
Yep.
watch out for these ingredients, watch out for these ingredients. So yeah, I should stress that I understand the inflammation issues with peanuts. I don't seem to suffer from it. That doesn't mean that somebody else can eat, like I said, that amount of peanut butter. And like I said, that experiment is also coming to an end because I live in Hawaii now, and a jar of peanut butter is $8. So
Oh,
it's been a very expensive,
ouch.
very expensive experiment.
Yeah, you're gonna have to break that expensive peanut butter habit soon, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Wow. Okay, what's the next topic on the list, James?
Well, I'd like to get into maybe cholesterol a little bit
Sure, absolutely.
because that seems to be, you know, a concern as well. I mean, and I just kind of touch on myself. I hate to bring up anecdotal evidence all the time, but I track how much cholesterol I eat in a day. And it's way over what the recommended daily allowance is. And yet my numbers have stabilized. They're super low, like I had mentioned earlier. Um, so I think, you know, a lot of people that are maybe new to this, that's one fear that they have is they're just so used to hearing like that's going to cause an increase in cholesterol. You know, don't eat eggs, don't eat saturated fats. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's kind of on the fence and they're worried about this, and maybe even if they think they're genetically predisposed to have high cholesterol,
Yeah.
would that be a concern?
So that's a great question. So first, if there's anybody who's new who doesn't know me, uh, I am a board certified family physician. I'm an MD. I've been practicing for over 15 years in Tennessee. And so I deal with cholesterol issues and questions every day and have since the very first day of my medical practice. When I first started 15 years ago, I was very concerned about my patients' total cholesterol and their LDL levels, and I prescribed statin medications every single day for those people. And I would yell at them if they didn't take their statin. And so like I've said many, many times, I used to be a fat, ignorant doctor. That was back before I knew better, right? And so now that I know better, let me first preface this by saying this is not medical advice tonight. This is just two guys talking. I happen to be a doctor, but tonight I ain't your doctor, right? And
Right.
so don't start, stop, or change any medication you're taking based on what we talk about. But I do encourage you to go to your doctor and say, hey, why am I taking this statin again? Because Dr. Berry said that total cholesterol has been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt to not be a marker for increased risk of heart attack and stroke. And if any doctor's been doing his reading, he knew 10 years ago that total cholesterol is meaningless when it comes to your risk of heart attack and stroke and other chronic diseases. It serves no useful purpose as a marker for heart attack. So whether your total cholesterol is 175 or 275, it's meaningless. It makes no difference as far as your risk of heart attack and stroke. And so total cholesterol makes no difference whatsoever. So I would encourage you to stop tracking that. There's no point. It doesn't matter, because even the American Heart Association, they're slowly backing away from the cholesterol thing. Like I said earlier, they'll never come out and say, hey, we were stupid. We were wrong about cholesterol. You can eat all you want. They're never going to say that. But they have quietly removed the recommendation to not eat more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day. That used to be part of in their guidelines. That's gone now.
Mhm.
And that's been gone for a few years, but you didn't hear a press release about that, did you? You didn't hear about that
No.
on the nightly news. It just kind of just disappeared. And so I predict that there will be more and more cardiologists coming out saying, well, we've known for years that total cholesterol is not a problem, trying to actually jump on the keto train when it does become mainstream. And so next is LDL. Let's talk about that. So LDL maybe be a tiny, weak indicator for increased risk of heart attack and stroke. Maybe, but it's very, very minor, okay? Triglycerides, however, are a huge risk factor for heart attack and stroke. If your triglycerides are high, you're at risk. You have an increased risk, and you need to fix that, and you need to fix that with keto. If you have low HDL, that's a proven risk factor for increased risk of heart attack and stroke. You need to fix that if your HDL is low, and you need to fix it with keto. If your A1C is high, if your C-peptide is high, if your fasting insulin is high, if your waist to height ratio is high, if your blood pressure is high, all those things are proven risk factors for increased risk of heart attack and stroke. And you can fix all of those, which are basically the diagnostic criteria for metabolic syndrome. You can fix all of those and reverse all of them with keto, with the exception of there are some people who are have bad genes, and they have genetic hypertension, and they have to take 1 or 2 pills a day to keep the blood pressure low. But everyone who goes keto, their blood pressure gets better, but it may not get low enough that you can stop all the meds. You may have to still be on one med for blood pressure, which I think that's fine. Be very careful which one your doctor puts you on. If your doctor has you on a beta blocker or a thiazide diuretic, they can actually lower your testosterone and raise your blood sugar and stall your weight loss and keep you out of ketosis and actually make you feel kind of crappy. And so make sure that your doctor has you on an appropriate blood pressure medication. But that's really the only thing most people who have been keto for a while, that's the only med they still usually need to take. Sometimes metformin or glucophage if they still have some insulin resistance, but that's it. And so don't worry about your total cholesterol. Worry very little about your LDL, but I want you to worry greatly about your triglycerides, your HDL, your waist to height ratio, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your A1C, your C-peptide, your fasting insulin, because those are the markers that tell you you're at increased risk for heart attack and stroke, along with your inflammatory markers like homocysteine and high sensitivity or cardiac CRP. Those are the things you really need to worry about. The total cholesterol, I could care less what your total cholesterol is, James. Literally, if I were your doctor and you were going to sue my ass if you had a heart attack, I wouldn't worry about your total cholesterol at all. It's irrelevant.
Well, that's very interesting. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of that at all. You know,
Right.
Like you said,
Right.
It wasn't a big press release or anything, marking these changes in the cholesterol debate.
Yeah. I think all the big dogs and the powers that be at Harvard and at the NIH and at the AHA are trying to slowly back away from the lipid hypothesis of heart disease and the saturated fat hypothesis and the cholesterol and LDL hypothesis. They're backing away from those slowly, and they're disowning it, but they're not doing it publicly as they should. If they had any gumption and any morals and any pride, they would stand up and say, just like I have multiple times, I was an idiot. I didn't know better. I'm sorry that I gave you that stupid advice. Stop worrying about your total cholesterol.
Well, okay. Yeah. And, hopefully more doctors will be able to say, hey, sorry about that. That's very interesting. Well, that kind of will take out the one thing I wanted to talk about was going to be dairy. But I guess we can kind of still discuss it a little bit, because when I was discussing peanut butter, I saw a lot of inflammation posts popping up. Let's talk about inflammation in dairy. I mean,
yeah.
Could one argue that dairy is actually more inflammatory than a legume or peanuts or, green beans?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on the person, I think that liquid dairy can be much more inflammatory depending on your DNA, where you're from. Where did your people live for the last 10,000 years? I think that's very important. And so I used to be a milk drinker. I played for all 3 sports back in school, right? And so I wanted to be very healthy and very athletic. And at one point in high school, I was drinking a gallon of 2% milk a day. Because I thought that was nature's health food, right? And my grandmother wouldn't buy whole milk because that was bad for me, so I had to drink 2% because that was better for me, right? But
right.
She didn't know better. She didn't know. She was doing the best she could do. And so I had chronic dandruff, I had chronic heartburn, I had terrible acne, all that I now look back and see as soon as I stopped dairy when I went to college, I couldn't have a fridge in my dorm room, and I didn't want to walk the half mile to the cafeteria to get a box of milk. So I just quit drinking milk. And all that, the dandruff, the heartburn, and the acne got substantially better. And I didn't, and my allergies too. I had terrible allergies all my teenage years. But as soon as I stopped dairy, my allergies went completely away. And so I think that liquid dairy especially, can be very inflammatory when you get up to, and so I think that it matters the fat content, and it also matters how much sugar and how much inflammatory protein is in the dairy. And so I wouldn't recommend that anybody watching this drink liquid milk, from skim milk up to whole milk. You just don't need that. Milk is designed to help baby cows gain 1,000 pounds in a year. That's what milk's for. And so if you want to gain a lot of weight, drink your milk. If you want to gain weight as fast as possible, drink skim milk, right? But
Right.
most people, for most people, that's not a goal. And so I wouldn't recommend liquid milk at all. I even recommend against half and half. I don't think it's fatty enough. I think it still has too much inflammatory protein and too much lactose. And so for most people, I would recommend heavy cream, butter, ghee, and full fat real cheeses that come from the deli, not the dairy section. And that's really the only dairy that I recommend. And since I've been somebody asked me what I eat on carnivore, and I eat all kinds of red meat, a little bit of chicken, lamb, beef, some pork, lots of butter, lots of ghee. I use a tiny bit of heavy cream, but not much. And then I eat some full fat cheeses like cheddar and Parmesan. And that's the extent of my carnivore diet. But I think for most people, even with severe lactose intolerance, I don't think butter and ghee is inflammatory for almost anybody. Now, if you are listening and you're like, no, dude, it does inflame me, then good. I'm glad you know that. Don't eat it, right? But I personally, if I have anything less fatty than heavy cream, I'll start to get phlegm. I'll start to get allergies. I'll start to just get all mucked up in here. And so I just have to avoid it.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So
what do you wash your peanut butter down with, James?
Just determination.
Oh, you just spoon it down. You don't wash it down with milk or cream or anything? Oh my God.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm feeling frisky, I'll put a little vanilla extract and some hemp hearts in it. But you know,
nice.
Other than that, it's just go for it. So we kind of talked about cholesterol a little bit. We kind of talked about touching on, the weight loss benefits of ketogenic way of life. So I'd like to talk about the diabetics a little bit, because that's, one thing I've been trying to do some research on, but I'm still very limited. And, I don't feel comfortable answering any questions I get asked me by type 1s or type 2s even. So maybe we could just talk a little bit maybe about like the Dawn phenomenon, and maybe we can touch on insulin just a little bit more. And, is insulin just a messenger? Is it the driving force of the problems, or is there something else that's causing the insulin?
Yeah, excellent. So I've seen two questions scroll by that came basically down to the same thing, that somebody was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and they asked their doctor, should I eat keto to try to correct this? And their doctor told them that's the worst possible thing they can do. So let's talk about that, and we'll bring insulin into it, and then we'll wrap up with the Dawn phenomenon. So there didn't used to be an epidemic of type 2 diabetes, James. Back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was no epidemic of type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes was, in fact, very rare back then, and it was absolutely unheard of in children to have type 2 diabetes. It just was not a thing at all, right? And so only starting in the 70s and actually the 80s, we started seeing this explosion of type 2 diabetes. Now, a lot of people don't know there's type 1 and type 2 diabetes, right? And most people don't really realize the percentages. Would it surprise you to know that 90% of all diabetes is type 2 diabetes?
Well, that wouldn't, it would and it wouldn't. I mean,
it's shocking, right? You think, well, I guess it's half and half. I don't know. But no, 90%, 85 to 90% of all diabetes is type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is still a very rare thing, right? But type 2 diabetes is exceedingly common. It's now just embarrassingly too common. Every doctor listening to this or anywhere out there should be ashamed that there is a type 2 diabetic or type 2 epidemic, because it's completely preventable and completely reversible. And so now let's talk about insulin. Insulin is a very important hormone in your body. Insulin does hundreds of things that we know about and probably thousands of things that we don't know about. You need insulin. You have to have insulin. Insulin is not bad. What's bad is that since the 1970s, we've been hacking our insulin levels in the wrong direction. And we've been doing that with the high carb, low saturated fat that we've been taught to eat. So we've actually been disrupting our insulin metabolism by the stupid diet that we were told to start eating starting back in 1977 with the federal guidelines. That's what's wrong with the insulin. And so a lot of people in keto, we almost demonize insulin, but it's not the insulin that's the demon. It's the insulin resistance that we created with our diet. And some people genetically just have some insulin resistance. And I think that was a protective evolutionary mechanism so you didn't starve to death. But if you're eating low carb enough, you're going to reverse your type 2 diabetes. So for whoever's listening and your doctor told you that was the worst thing that you could do, if you're type 2 diabetic, your doctor's ignorant, just like I used to be ignorant. I'm not being mean. That's an honest word. He just doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to probably print some stuff off and take it to him, show him a couple of my YouTube videos and say, Doc, are you sure that eating low carb is bad for a type 2 diabetic? Because it seems to me like that would be good because my blood sugar will come down if I eat low carbs, right, doctor? And then if my blood sugar comes down, then won't my insulin come down as well? And then I can maybe stop taking these two medicines and this one injection you got me on, right, doctor? And if enough people go to their doctor and respectfully say that sort of thing, their doctor will Google it, James, and then he'll be like, damn, I'm sick of hearing about this keto crap. I'm about to Google this and see what the hell's going on. And when he Googles that and watches a few videos and listens and reads a few blog posts, he's going to go, huh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And then you just woke another doctor up. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And I think that's how this movement, this keto movement is going to keep growing, because I already have at least once a week, I have a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant come to me from another county or another state to be my patient for their health, but also to learn about, okay, how do I take this back to my patients? And how do I tell my patients about it kind of on the down low so I don't get in trouble with my doctor because he's not on board yet, right? And so we're talking about all these ninja strategies of how you can get this information to your patient about how to eat keto and reverse or cure their type 2 diabetes without getting yelled at by your supervising physician. And so it's kind of a fun game, but we shouldn't have to be playing that game, but currently we do. And so insulin is not a bad guy. Insulin is vital. But what the bad guy is eating too many carbs, which keeps your insulin level chronically elevated, which is going to turn off your weight loss. It's going to kick you out of ketosis. It's going to increase your inflammation all over your body. It's going to put you at increased risk of heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, kidney failure, fatty liver, liver failure, fatty pancreas. That's the things that a chronically high insulin level will give you. And it's not that the insulin's bad, it's that your diet is bad. You got to get the carbs out of your diet. And so now let's talk about dawn phenomenon or dawn effect. And so a lot of people think this is something that just happens in diabetics, but that's not true at all. The dawn phenomenon actually happens in every mammal on the planet that I'm aware of. When mammals sleep, right, their cortisol and their adrenaline levels are kind of low. But right before a mammal wakes, your cortisol level spikes and your adrenaline spikes. And a lot of people will wake up with a start, right? You know, and you're like, your heart's beating fast and you think, well, I must have had a bad dream and I don't remember it. No, that's the dawn phenomenon. Your cortisol spiked and your adrenaline spiked, and that's what woke you up. You thought it was your alarm clock, but your body has to be ready to wake up, or that alarm clock can go off for 3 hours and you're not going to wake up. And so that's what causes the dawn effect. So anybody who's monitoring their blood sugar and or their blood pressure, you need to wait 1 hour after you wake up to check your blood sugar or your blood pressure. Otherwise, they're going to be a little falsely elevated because of the adrenaline, the cortisol that's circulating that hasn't gotten out of your system yet because you just woke up. And that's what the dawn phenomenon is. And it happens in all humans, whether you have diabetes or prediabetes or not. And so anybody who's tracking blood sugar or blood pressure, wait an hour after you wake up.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of people, I think, maybe don't consider like circadian rhythm and that kind of thing. So when you say an hour after you wake up, whether you're working the night shift, if you sleep from 4 in the morning until,
Yeah.
3
Doesn't
p.m.
matter
or
time of day. It
whatever.
matters when you wake up. When that's when your morning starts. And so if you're a night owl and working night shift is natural to you, I think that's probably pretty healthy and safe. But if you're on night shift and it's not a choice and you hate it and you feel bad on it, you need to try your best to get off night shift because it's very, very unhealthy. Swing shift, I think, is even more unhealthy. A lot of law enforcement officers and a lot of factory workers work swing shift, where they'll work a week of days, a week of evenings, a week of midnights, and then off a week. Terribly unhealthy. It cuts into your family time. It keeps your cortisol chronically wacky, and that's not good at all. I think the incidence of obesity is double in shift workers as it is in the general population. It's much more common to be obese if you're a shift worker. So even if you have to take a buck or two an hour pay cut, I know that hurts. I've been there, but your health is the most important asset you got, brothers and sisters. You cannot work that night shift for an extra buck an hour or something and think that that's going to be good for you long term. You can't do that.
That's an excellent point. That's really interesting to hear, because I think a lot of people too, they might encounter some issues on their journey, and they'll start blaming things, but they won't look at their sleep or sleep patterns necessarily, or outside stress factors. You mentioned cortisol a couple of times. I know that's kind of, that one and insulin are kind of the enemies of people on the ketogenic way of eating, it seems like. Let's talk about cortisol a little bit. Now, would you speculate that once you've reduced your carbohydrate intake, that your body's reliance on cortisol is maybe not as much as it would be, therefore you're not producing as much, so that cortisol spike would not necessarily lead to a weight gain or a weight stall?
Yeah, I think keto is going to make cortisol less relevant when it comes to weight gain and chronic disease. I totally agree with that. Again, we have to realize that cortisol is a necessary hormone. It's not bad. It's also not a bad guy. It's vital. You have to have cortisol or you will die, okay?
Right.
But what you want is a low normal cortisol. You want to have cortisol when you need it. So if your next door neighbor comes over and slaps your face, you can rise up and take care of that. That's cortisol and adrenaline. That's what gives you that get up and go to do that. But at the same time, you don't want to have chronically elevated cortisol, because that's just going to lead to chronic disease. And so if you have stress in your life, if you're not sleeping well, if you're on swing shift or second shift or third shift, you've got to make that your top priority to get that in order. Because when your cortisol is chronically abnormally elevated, that's going to lead to nothing but misery, suffering, chronic disease, and early death. Yeah, absolutely. So James, tell everybody the group that you're in. Tell everybody is this a group that people can join? Is that okay?
Yeah, we have our main group was created by Michelle Rock, and it's called Adapting to Keto. You've probably seen her YouTube channel if you've been looking for recipes or anything. And then we have several subgroups off of that main group. We have one that I admin for, focused on fitness. And then we have another one focused on being clean and dairy free. And that one's admin by Vonda. And then we have a support kind of group, Uncensored, where, if somebody is carb binging, or it's kind of a spot where they can go to, they don't have to worry about people jumping on them saying, that's not keto, that's not keto. And so that's just kind of a spot for that. And that one's admin by Max. So, yeah, we have the main group, and then like Excellent. I said, there's a few offshoots there if somebody wants to just focus on one aspect of the ketogenic way of life.
That's excellent. I love it. Well, James, thank you so much for joining me this evening. This has been a pleasure. If you guys ever want me to do any work inside one of the groups, I'd be happy to. We could do lives, we could do whatever. I'm always willing to help. I love helping people get healthier. It's kind of, I took an oath, didn't I, to kind of do that. So right. I really meant that when I took that oath, and I really enjoy doing that. So if you want to do this again sometime in the future, I'm happy to. Just reach out, James. And if you ever need me to do anything inside the group, just let me know, brother.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Barry. It's been my pleasure to be able to sit down with you this past hour and just kind of talk about some of these things. And definitely, I'd love to do another one with you at some point in the future.
Absolutely, brother. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. That was James Furnish, and you can check out that group, Adapting to Keto. I think they have 66,000 members, and I think it's one of the keto groups that's actually a nice group. I don't think there's a lot of keto Nazis or keto bullies in that group. So if you're looking for a group that wants to be helpful to a newcomer and help you out, then check out their group. I think that'd probably be a good place for you to play. And I'm going to get off here and do some more work. I've got a couple of YouTube videos to work on, and then I'm working on that new book. So this is Dr. Barry. I'll see you next time.